Nope.
Hello, dear listener, and welcome to today's video. We'll be continuing the trend of Japanese urban legends, and this time I'll be relating them back to American culture. Now, like I said in a previous video about these Japanese urban legends, most of us have encountered them in some way, shape, or form, whether it be movies, TVs, or video games. I can almost guarantee you've heard of at least one of the following 5 stories I'm about to share, but some of them may take you by surprise. So sit back, relax, and get ready to hear about 5 creepy Japanese tales in American media. Number 1. Kyoko. Most of us have already heard of Kyoko since her story was brought to the big screen in the 2004 horror film The Grudge. If you've seen the movie, a lot of this will just be review. The legend goes as follows. Kyoko grew up in a broken home, neglected by her parents and bullied by her peers. When she became an adult, she married a man named Taiko Saikai, and together they had a son named Toshio. One day, Taiko stumbled upon his wife's diary, and after reading it, became convinced that she was cheating on him. Enraged, he waited for her to return home from work. When she did, he attacked the unsuspecting woman right in front of their son. After being beaten and slashed with a knife, she managed to break free and ran for the stairs, where she slipped and fell, breaking her ankle. Kyoko did her best to crawl away, but Taiko came from behind and with his bare hands snapped her neck. This paralyzed her but did not kill her. She was unable to move or speak except for her croaking, dying gurgle. Her body was dragged up the steps and thrown into the attic where she died. In her final moments, she had to lay helpless in the dark and listen in horror as her husband drowned their son in the tub. Her spirit was said to come back seeking revenge, crawling down the stairs as she murdered her husband by choking him with her own hair. It is said that if you enter her house even now, you will hear the gurgling and see the spirit of Kyoko crawling down the stairs, neck still snapped. Number 2. Sadako. Going along the lines of famous horror films, Sadako inspired the 2002 classic horror film The Ring, where she is referred to as Samara. Sadako also grew up in a broken home with separated parents. She lived with her mother, who had psychic abilities. Because of her gifts, she had many tests performed on her, led by an individual known as Dr. Fukare. After Fukare published the results of his studies, a large portion of the medical and scientific community accused Sadako's mother of being a fraud and a liar. These events depressed the mother so deeply that she took her own life. After the suicide, Sadako was sent to live with her father in a remote area. It wasn't long until he realized that Sadako had inherited a certain set of psychic gifts. To be exact, she had the ability to mentally project her thoughts into photographic form, a process known as thoughtography. Her father brought her to the familiar Dr. Fukare, where she can be studied. They urged Sadako to perform numerous tests that pushed her abilities to the limit. Naturally, Fukare wanted to publish yet another book of his findings. Sadako instantly recalled the events that transpired after her mother's studies were published and refused, doing her best to leave. Angered by her decision, Dr. Fukare abducted the young girl, brought her to the woods, strangled her, and dumped her body in a well, which he sealed at the top to stop anyone from finding the body. What he didn't know is that Sadako did not die. She awoke in the well, scared and confused. She tried her hardest to escape, climbing the wet walls until her fingers were nearly worn away before giving up. She stayed alive in the well for 7 days before her death. Before dying, she vowed revenge. Using her psychic abilities, she projected a series of unsettling and cryptic images onto a videotape. Anybody unfortunate enough to watch the videotape dies in 7 days. Number 3. Kappas. These mythical creatures are a somewhat humanoid cross between a monkey, turtle, and a frog. They possess the green, scaly skin of a frog, the head of a monkey, and the beak and shell of a turtle. As you may have guessed from the name and physical description, these creatures are the main inspiration behind the Koopa characters in the world-renowned Super Mario Bros. Franchise. Unlike their 8-bit counterparts, Kappas are much more sinister in their nature. While some are simply pranksters who enjoy stinking up the place with their potent flatulence, many are known to be violent and perverse. Kappas have been said to not only peep up women's dresses, but also wait below the surface of the water, awaiting their female victims to strip down for a swim or a bath. When they do, they would grope them, rape them, or even pull them down below the surface and disembowel them, only to snack on their innards. Some stories claim that the Kappas wait below the surface as people crouch over the water to relieve themselves. When the victim least expects it, the Kappas reach through their rectum all the way to their tongue before yanking them back into the water so hard that their body twists inside out, making it that much easier to pick off the organs. Another story claims that a pack of Kappas once raped an entire village of women, causing many of them to become impregnated. The children that were born were so vile that they were chopped up, stored in wine cases, and buried deep underground. Number 4. Toneau. If you've ever seen the 2006 film Pan's Labyrinth, then you're familiar with Toneau, also referred to as the Pale Man. This monstrous entity is often shown to have milky white, sagging skin hanging off his bones. On his face, his eyes are missing, and instead he has eyeballs embedded in the palm of his hands that he uses to see. According to legend, Toneau was already a blind man in his earthly life. At an old age, he was jumped by a group of men who robbed him and beat him severely. After being left to die, Toneau cried out in rage. He swore that if he was only able to see his attackers' faces, that he would be able to get his revenge. When his body finally gave out and Toneau died, he was filled with pure anger and hatred, and in turn returned as a ghoulish creature, complete with eyes in the palm of his hands. It is believed that Toneau now wanders around aimlessly from town to town, seeking his attackers in an attempt to find justice. Sadly, due to his blindness, he never actually saw their faces. Even sadder, this means he kills anyone he comes across, including men, women, and children, especially children. Many stories describe Toneau chasing down young men and women, sucking their bodies dry of blood, stealing their bones for food, and simply eating them alive altogether. Number 5. The Himura Mansion. Perhaps one of the most famous haunted houses in Tokyo, the Himura Mansion is known to be the site of a crazed domestic slaughter. It is also the inspiration behind the beloved and terrifying Fatal Frame game series. According to the legend, the Himura family were members of the Shinto faith, a Japanese religion that had a heavy focus on establishing a connection between the present and the past. The particular practices and rituals the family performed had been viewed as cult-like and outlawed in Japan at that time. As you may have guessed, that did not stop the Himura family from continuing their traditions. One of these practices, known as the strangling ritual, required the sacrifice of a young, pure girl from the Himura family, which they called the Rope Shrine Maiden. Performing the ritual was required every 50 years in order to ward off bad karma and harmful spirits. It would start by selecting a baby girl from the family. This girl would be raised in seclusion, away from the world and all its impurities. When the time came to perform the ritual, the girl would be brought into the backyard and secured at the mouth of what they believed to be a portal that allowed the negative energy to flow through. The defenseless maiden would be tied by the hands, feet, and neck by strong ropes that were also tied at the other end to oxen. These oxen would be forced to run in opposite directions, which ultimately would rip the young girl apart. The bloody rope would then be draped over the mouth of the portal, sealing it off from the omens that waited from the other side. This granted the family another 50 years of peace, fortune, and success. This continued for generations. It wasn't until the last recorded maiden that things were thrown for a major loop. It is said that the maiden freed herself from the seclusion she was subjected to and began to wander the mansion. During the exploration, she looked out of the window and spotted a young boy around her age whom she instantly fell in love with and in lust with. This meant the maiden was no longer pure, and when it came time for the sacrifice, the ritual went awry. The man that, at the time, was the leader of the Himura family learned of the incident and the reasons behind it. Fueled by anger in the maiden and in himself, seeing as it was his responsibility to protect the family, the leader decided the best course of action would be to spare his relatives the impending chaos that would surely follow the botched ritual. After equipping himself with his katana, the man proceeded to hack apart everyone in the Himura Mansion. Slice after slice, slash after slash, he cleansed the house of his doomed family, before eventually turning the blade on himself, taking his own life. Since the time that the family was butchered, unexplainable, often paranormal events have taken place in or around the Himura Mansion. Bloody stains, handprints, and apparitions of the deceased family have been seen countless times from those foolish enough to step foot in the building. One of these apparitions, said to be of a young girl donning a kimono, can only be seen by photographing a certain window of the mansion. This girl, more than likely a tormented soul of a rope shrine maiden, is the primary inspiration behind Fatal Frame and its unique, chilling gameplay. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this week's video, go ahead, take that like button, and mutilate it. I'm just kidding, but seriously, make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already for future stories and updates. In a previous Japanese urban legend video, I brought up Futakuchi Onna, who actually inspired a character in Tim Burton's latest film, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Be sure to check that video out if you haven't done so already. Link on screen now. Until next week, stay safe out there. I'll be seeing you in the next video.